Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our channel, Sugar, Spice, and Everything Chaos. I'm your host, Perline, and this is my co host, Marianne. And today we're going to continue talking about something interesting that I think all of us are talking about it, but we're not going anywhere with the conversation. The topic is on marriage. So we're going to continue this with a different. Direction today, where we're going to talk about how education has changed a lot of things for women in terms of the type of resources that we have to know what is wrong for us. But we're still stuck in a system that doesn't do right for us. So we're going to talk about how we can right the wrongs that's systemically, problematic. But before we get into that, Anne has been reading this book, and she had a few thoughts that we discussed before we shot this episode. And do you want to introduce this book and talk about a few interesting things that stood out for you from this book, and then we'll continue the conversation from there.
Yeah. I want to start with this line to say that women's career is just a hobby. And I think nothing has changed over a long period of time. Right now, I think women do come out in in different fields, even male dominated fields, and do all of those things. But I want to address a very important aspect of why our career still is considered a hobby. So, to draw some attention from literature from very long back, which is the Virginia Woolf's Room of One's Own and Bell Jar by what's that girl? Sylvia Plath. Yeah. Both of these women are very different women, right? One woman who is deprived of education, who is from the British English culture. At that time, she's not even allowed to enter into a library, right? And she has this craving to write her own fiction, but then she talks about this in a way that she's extremely depressed because she's not given an opportunity or a space or a freedom to be her own, to have her own thoughts. And you will see that she'll be noting down all these thoughts, and she'll be seeing how she, being a equal species to a man, that she's completely been disregarded, as completely disregarded, with her own thoughts is not taken as anything seriously. On the other hand, Sylvia Plath actually talks about this character, Esther Wood, and it's a very different character from Virginia Woolf, right? So, because here this girl is extremely talented, she has these scholarships and she is working, and she also feels that how grateful or how unique she is to have that opportunity to work among the men in a huge New York office, wearing that stilettos and all of those office, this one. And she really sees that she has gotten, it's been a lucky lot sort of a thing. But then you see that she's not really happy and she's not really content, because she knows somewhere after the scholarship ends that she has to go back, she has to choose something that is what many females at that time has to choose. That because at the end of the day she has to choose to have a family, she has to choose to have a husband, and they are going to look at her work or her zest for her career as just a hobby. Because there's this character that she briefly dates in that book, and he's a doctor, and he tends to, and she's an English literature major, right? So he tends to look at her English literature and her thing for poetry and all of that as just a hobby. And he even mentions briefly that, after our marriage we are going to be this, we are going to have that and this. And she, for a moment, she loses it, because she thought he is a man who is with values, who is with ambition, things like that, and he will also look at her the same way. And in the same way, even in today's world, lot of our partner or lot of our people in our families look at us as our career as just a hobby. Unfortunately, I think even if we are the best in the field, I remember I went to my grandmother and then I said, like, I am starting something of my own, I have this work and that. She used to be so much appreciative and she always used to push me to become better. But right now, because I'm at the age of 28, 27, since then, what happened is she just thinks that whatever I'm doing is useless and she wants me to get married to a guy and just live on his money, right? And all the hard work that I put is just nothing. So, this is what you see in two sides of the scenario. So, Pauline, like, what do you think of these two girls, Sylvia Plath and Virginia Woolf, and what they are going through? Is it like relevant in today's world?
I think when you look at a lot of women, they don't realize what you know the world has to offer until it's very late. Like I know a lot of women who get into like arranged marriage situations and things. And because there's this fantasy, right? Once you get married and like the husband is the provider, everything's going to be taken care of. It's only after they enter the marriage they realize, oh, this is what a husband has to offer. This is not that great. Like I don't have anything that I get in return that's actually like a good return of investment. So when women realize this, that's when they think about, oh, I actually had hobbies before. And then they think about, oh, I had an identity before. Because at the time of marriage, right, all these women that I've been in very close contact with, they were so ready to leave their identities behind to jump into the identity of that man. They were
Mhm.
so okay with being the secondary character, the sidekick character in that man's life, because for them it was about building a life together, and the guy gets to be the main character, the Batman to the Robin that the girl would become, or some. I am judging, but so you see that like once women get married, they realize men are not like gods. Men are human as well, and as much as a man will kind of talk a big game and give you this dreamy situation, men are human and they have their own flaws, they have their own insecurities. So like there's a whole period of adjustment where men kind of continue being that performative male where they're like, oh, I'll do this, I'll do that. And for a while it kind of becomes this thing of false hope where this woman would be like, okay, he's saying something, it's going to happen, it's going to happen. But slowly she realizes, okay, it's never going to happen. And that's when it hits her, that's when it hits her that okay, she has to be the adult who pretends that she is supportive of someone who is not yet fully an adult. And I think it's a
See,
very heartbreaking thing for a woman.
it also makes sense, right? See, I am just thinking many of the PhD, the master's housewives right now have chosen this life primarily not because of the husband, but because of the children, right? The childcare responsibility outweighs for a woman compared to the taking care of the husband, right? And I remember that a lot of them don't really have a choice. Nobody will look after the child if the mother doesn't look after the child. So there's a serial in Tamil serial in Vijay TV which is called Alage Alage. Okay, so this talks about two different kind of women. A woman who has been come into the family and she's made into a literally a slave. She has to slog from morning 4 o'clock to night 11 o'clock. From and they would demand her everything. The in-laws would demand her everything to be done by her. For example, they won't even go and reach and take a cup of water. They will ask her to fetch them water, and it's the same with fan and things like that, right? So you will see that distinction where women are forced into it, and there is a time where women has to go out, and who will take care of the kid? That is the answer. And they are telling outrightly, it is your kid, it is your responsibility, why do we have to take care of it, right? And how can we blame women here? Because they don't. What are they going to do? What can they do? That is what is going on in my head.
But don't you think like women usually are more accountable and more responsible? Like for instance, these are women who have dreamt of marriage their whole lives, right? So they get married and then they also have children because that's something that they dream about. And once they have the child becomes this little piece of treasure that they want to kind of take care of, make the best of the best and all that, and they're ready to pour everything into it. But then what the women did not realize was before marriage she envisioned herself getting married to a man who's equal to her, who's equal in intelligence, equal in resourcefulness, equal in kindness, right? And then they get married and then she realizes this man is basically a child. He'll be acting like a second child who she did not even give birth to, or she doesn't want to mother him. But then he's going to make dumb mistakes and things. So it's kind of a thing of weaponized incompetence that happens, and a lot of these women are just like, oh, you know what, I'll just do the work because anyway you're not going to do a proper job. So a lot of women do not expect this because men, I think, are trained by society to talk as if they know more than they know. They have this weird audacity where they'll know nothing about the subject, but they'll act like they know it. If you ask a man, right, a random average man, if he can fly a flight, you will see that he will have the confidence to say yes. Where is this confidence coming from? I don't know. I don't know. But then I wish I had that confidence, because sometimes they'll ask me, oh, like, psychology, right? So what do you think about personality? And I'd be like, I'm not sure if that makes sense. Like, as much as it's my expertise, there is a little bit of hesitation that I find imposter syndrome is real. But for men, somehow they are imposters, but they don't have a syndrome. They only have audacity. So I think as women, you need to kind of be able to have that discernment where if this man is actually capable and competent. And if yes, he's not going to be, like charming you. He's going to be probably someone who's just a little scary, because he's going to tell you this is what it is. And it's not going to be like rainbows and butterflies in the stomach and whatever. But, this is what I think women need to look for if they are planning to get married, if they're planning to have children. But unfortunately, these are things that we don't get told, right? For most of us, I think, at least in the villages, right, you see this culture of women who I know, because I teach in college, right? I know a lot of girl students who basically take up a master's degree simply because they know for a fact that if they don't continue their education, their parents will force them to get married to some relative uncle. Yes, relative uncle, because the age difference will be crazy, but the parents will not care, because it's all about dowry and keeping it in the family and making sure that the family grows. Like, marriage has been like a system of business and economic sustenance, right? So when this is the reality where women are not even allowed to choose the subject of their liking, they just have to pursue something for the heck of pursuing it. And once they're at that stage where education gets cut off, women are much more comfortable getting back into education simply to avoid another responsibility that they know is going to cost them their identity, their peace, so many things, that body, because pregnancy, let's be honest, it's not going to be easy. So women do know it's bad, but then you somehow stumble upon something and you think, no, it's going to be different, it's going to be different for me. And then like, you realize it's not going to be different, and things again go downhill. So I think it's like a vicious cycle where now we know the pattern now, but now we have to ask this question to ourselves: how do we change? Because we know this is a trap. Like, people with master's degrees, people with like double degrees and like PhDs, who are basically so full of subject matter expertise. But when it comes to, actual independence in thought, right? They don't have it. A lot of these PhD holding, degree holding women are still stuck in this thing where they think all this education is nothing if it means that I cannot please my husband, right? So these are the women, like, I know, and women in the from the previous generation, who will basically say, if you cannot keep a husband, what is the point of all these degrees? Because ultimately, like you said, Indian society still views degrees and careers of women as hobbies and not as something that's serious. So
See,
how do
two
we
things.
actually think about change?
See, from what you were talking about, I kind of thought about these two things, okay? So the first thing is actually how women, in order for women to take up space, they first have to think that they have to delegate the task, right? But the partner that they are with, they often, what they do is they think they don't have the capacity or the capability to do it. So they tend to take a lot on their plate, and they tend to take responsibility and accountability, and they kind of, I don't know why, but they also feel that too good about themselves that they are doing so much. But the second point is, even if they think that the other person, the husband, can't do it, after doing it they get into this sort of this helpless mentality, that, oh, I can't do anything about it, this is my life, this is what it is for me, I can't get a job, I can't apply for a job, now I have a kid, now I have in-laws, now I have this and now I have that. See, I understand if you are intending to do this with a clear picture of wanting to take care of the family. If that is what you want, I completely understand. But then there are women who work with, I have no choice. And that is where I have the problem. how can you say that you have no choice, and what kind of a thing that you are passing on to a next generation? Because our parents said they have no choice, our grandparents said we have no choice, and right now we are also saying no choice. How long this is going to go is what my question is.
That's a super valid question, and I think like women should be accountable and answer that question to the best of their abilities. Because as much as it's easier to say, this is the life of women, women are cursed, Eve ate the apple. Like, we go as far as to say Eve is the problem. But I think, yeah, okay, maybe Eve was the problem, whatever. But right now you are being the problem. So what are you doing about it? I would kind of tell this to, this is kind of my advice for people who have relationship problems, right? So anytime someone comes to me with a relationship problem, my immediate solution is break up. And people don't like hearing that because they're like, I'm coming and telling you, I just want to, like share and whatever. But I'm like, no, but every single time if you're going to come and complain about your relationship, sounds like you're not happy in the relationship. I don't know what it is and why, but then you're not happy. So, like, why would you want to fight and like stay in the relationship? Is like a genuine question I have. Because I think personally for me, right, whenever I felt a little unsafe in relationships, I felt a little trapped. I think we've had this conversation where you even told me like this is actually nothing, something's wrong with you, but I'm like, no, 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 this is something. And then I feel literally suffocated when someone I get the sense that someone's trying to control even my narrative. And the minute I sense that, my, like brain goes on full, like chaos. And then I have to cut off the relationship and say, I have to choose me. Because anytime someone's going to take away my room, my space where I do my hobbies, my space where my career is not a hobby. Hobbies are different, career is different. I have my friends that I kind of talk to. So like recently, this is something that I've realized. I realized like a lot of young people, like younger to us, right? Like 5 years and younger, they kind of have things more sorted than we do. Like for instance, when they talk about dating and things, right? Because they are dating, they have this very clear maturity about it where they're like, I am not dating to get married right now. I'm dating to get to know myself right now. And I'm like, oh
Yeah,
wow. Like
yeah.
your tiny brain with underdeveloped prefrontal cortex came up with that. Like that's so cool, and I'm very appreciative of that. But like if talk about, if they talk about this with, like, let's say someone from our generation, we'll all like say, oh, Gen Z, they're so casual, they're situationship. No, but they're learning about themselves, they're learning what their hobbies are, they're learning what they like, they're learning what they don't like. So they know they're not going to settle. So the minute something goes off, they know how to get off the bus. So I think that's where it is. It's easy to kind of play that narrative that has been handed down to us from the grandparents to the parents to us. But I think it takes real guts for women to get that PhD degree. Like, I won't say don't get the degree because the degree is always nice. You get to put a doctor in front of your name, which is really cool. So, get the degree, but also make sure that degree is something that you use to contribute something to society. It's easy to kind of start a family and then later blame it on your family and your system, saying, I'm not able to work and that's the reason I have to, whatever. But then why not find a family? Because like quite literally marriage is a family that you choose. Find a family that would support you in the best way possible. I think I'll share this little story from like people I know in my life. So I know a couple of married people whose marriages are very cute, right? Like these are healthy marriages that I would say, where when they started off, it was very romantic and cute. But once the children, were born, things became chaotic because children are not easy at all. So I know some couples who had to take time off from work and they kind of became full time parents, and that worked out for some. But for others, both of them, had things related to their careers, meaning they had identities tied to their careers. So they decided, what, for us to protect our identities, the solution is that we hire a maid and a help, so that we can have our careers, but at the same time things get taken care of around the house, so we don't like miss out on the bond that we have between each other. So the husband and wife, what they realized was, they didn't hate each other. They didn't, lose the spark or whatever. They just needed a little bit of an extra support at home. And once that support was there, their intimacy was back on. They found each other attractive again. They started to have better sex. So what you see is PhD housewives is something that is again a very sad part of the system. It shouldn't be that way. We made it that way, and right now, I think it's very important that we reflect and we think about how PhD housewives need to be reframed, so that we girls we get our PhDs, but we also make sure that we're still earning an income.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
actually, it reminds me of the viral reel that we had, right? It talks about something that's very close to what we are talking today. See, as much as that we have come to a place that we have earned a position and a name and an identity, and we are able to earn more, we have the potential to earn more. But somehow it all comes down to this fact that, oh, she has gotten a PhD, but what's the use? So the fact that people are taunting us, women, is also because they know even if we work hard, even if we have the potential to earn, that we are going to end up as housewives, and that is so sad. And I know that many of the girls right now are going through this, and from what you were saying, I was thinking about all the comments that these women go through, right? See, as much as it is easier to refute, see, what you are asking is what Gen Zs are doing is trying to fight against the system, and that is not easy, but it's coming at ease to them because they don't feel related to this world. They kind of see themselves as away from the world. Their identity is not tied to the society at all. They live apart from society. Right now with the cockroach Janata Party as well, I think the fact that they are able to portray themselves and identify themselves with certain causes is because they don't see themselves part of the world or the part of the society currently, and it becomes easy for them. But right now, see, our generation women, if we have to do it, we have to cut off all that we have learned so far and abandon it and create something that is new. And I don't think so it is going to be easy.
Obviously, it's not going to be easy, but then it's happening, right? Like yesterday, I went out with a friend, and then just casually, she tells me that a couple of her school friends are getting divorced. And
Hmm.
the reason for it is basically, men who are incompetent. And it's not even surprising anymore for me, like I'm
Hmm.
this person who talks a lot about feminism and patriarchy. I'm like that crazy lady who's like going around saying it's all, patriarchy, right? So now when, we're at this breaking point in culture where people are actually experiencing dating and marriage and childbirth and all these systemic things, and now when I talk about the patriarchy, the women are like agreeing with me. Like these were all women who looked at me as this toxic man hating, person. But now they're like, oh, you don't hate men. You actually are right about men. And then I'm like, yeah, yeah, I am right about these men. Because like you like if you actually sit and talk to girls about their relationships honestly, you will clearly see that most of these girls, when they get into a relationship, marriage also included, they start to idolize the man. They start to kind of worship the man, saying he's the provider and the protector. I will do whatever it is that my man tells me. And then they don't realize that this man is human, so he's flawed. Whatever you romanticize, right? This man is not God. This man will never be God. So I
And
think
not even being a
women have to.
human, bro.
Yeah, exactly. But then, like automatically you give him that status, no shift to my Shakti. What nonsense. I'm judging again. Like, so I think like that's where we need to first start. Like when you first have, this relationship where, you find that there is mutual attraction. You like the person and they like you back. The first thing to do is like not idolize the man. Look at him as a human who's lived exactly like you, and see if you can get along with him as like a person. Like if I talk to you, are you a decent human? And if you are a decent human, then like give it some time. and then do something else about it. But a lot of us, I think, we don't give it time at all. We immediately say, oh, now that we've met, now we have to get married, now this happens, that happens. Women will start thinking about life insurance, health insurance, everything. But what is this man thinking about?
Hmm.
Right? So I think this is where we have to understand where reality stands. A lot of men are just talk, like they would just talk about, things that are superficial. And this is another thing that I see in relationships now, where one of the ways that these PhD housewives are kept as housewives, right, is basically men who foster insecurities in their wives. They keep
Hmm.
saying, you don't know உனக்கு ஒண்ணும் தெரியாது உனக்கு ஒண்ணும் தெரியாது. And the more this is something that the women hear. The funny part would be, this is the woman who will be like, like paying the bills, doing everything around the house, planning cognitive functions, executive functions, everything she'll be doing, but அவளுக்கு ஒண்ணும் தெரியாது. She doesn't know anything. So the women need to kind of stop and like ask themselves, do I really not know anything?
See,
If you
another thing is women who get out. I think this is a very common comment from starting from early back in the century as well, because men used to go out and work, women used to stay at home. It's like, they used to say that, you don't know the world, you know how it is difficult out in the world. And I've been out in the world and dealing with a lot of problems, and you don't know what is happening. So, this you don't know aspect, this mansplaining aspect, and all of these things has become so ingrained. Like, I have seen it in my families, I have seen it with my friends families, my I have also my clients, right? I was just telling you yesterday about this girl is extremely pretty, this girl is extremely talented. She's been put for a major project and she's able to bring clients and she's earning so much. But then her partner keeps telling her that you don't know, you don't have an education, you don't have this, you are fat and this and that. How dare you? I'm like, you know, I can't understand. How can you look, say, for example, you look at a flower and say it's ugly? It doesn't make sense. But then imagine the kind of brainwash and the gaslighting that's been done to make these women believe that they are actually not good, actually dumb, actually all of this. And I
but
think
like
I'm worried about these
see, I
women.
I would kind of, like question these women. If a guy is like looking at you and saying you're ugly, I remember this conversation we had, about this client of yours where you said, the guy she was dating actually said, I can't go out with you if you look like this and all that, right?
Mhm.
Break up, girl. What are you doing with this loser?
That is something that I really can't see. What is happening even for the PhD housewives, the master's housewives, the educated housewives is they are made to feel that even if they go out and work in the field, that they will not be able to do a good job. And I have many clients who are working, they will be like, no, I don't know anything. I don't know anything. I can't work. If I take up job and what if I mess it up? And all of this irrational fears are being put into the woman. And not just this, imagine how a girl lady lives, na? Like a father is restricting her, moral policing, mother is moral policing, her in-laws hate her, her relatives are commenting, the brothers are casually making sexist jokes, the boss is making sexist jokes, and the children or the mother, son or the daughter feels that she's very suffocating, and then the husband thinks she's dramatic. I mean, I I mean, it's very difficult, yeah. Like it's such a poor thing. I understand it's a poor thing, but it's also because that woman or we are allowing it. That space is given. Okay, we put everyone and say, "I will do it. I will do it." Women somehow likes to keep doing a lot of things. The superwoman concept that I will, if I have nothing, I will clean the room. If I have nothing, that I will make some, work. I will create some work and I'll do that work. I don't know what kind of appreciation they are looking for by doing more when you clearly know nobody gives a damn.
I want to say a lame joke here. From Mariamma to Mariamma, everybody is selfless, and they've all set such a bad example for us that we are now unable to reach that standard of selflessness.
Bro,
The thing
Mariamma
is,
is not sacrificial, bro. Mariamma is like killing only.
But even she's one amma, bro. At the end of the day, she will be
Oh,
like,
right.
if you go,
But she's
yeah,
only
pray to
amma to
her.
the woman, nice woman. She's not
Yeah,
amma to
but like,
everyone.
but the nice woman is a dumb woman. She'll be like, please protect my husband.
Oh,
Ayyo,
right.
amma. So like Mariamma will have no choice but to protect that husband because this lady is will show her tali and say, protect me, amma. So
I think
I feel
we
like
just women have bad role models.
yeah, I agree. I think we just have bad role models, but who is a right role model for women right now? I don't know because I think one end, right, we want our space, we want our identities, we want our independence, we want money, we want freedom, we want all of that. On the other end, we also want to feel safe in a world where there are men who are coexisting with us. This doesn't always have to be a romantic relationship, whether it be our relationship with our fathers, whether it be our relationship with our brothers, whether it be relationships with like our male classmates or our younger brothers, we want to be safe, right? And at this point, right, like you said, there's no safety because there is morality. And morality is always something that's only imposed on women because I don't know, maybe there's a thing on our head that says we're idiots.
Health.
But yeah, but like, I think that is something that needs to change where the morality is something that we need to consciously rewrite for ourselves, where we say, if my brother can do it, so can I. And then you go and like ace the max test. You go and like get your driving license and start driving. I think a lot of us have become very comfortable with scripts that are very sexist and toxic. A lot of women believe they are bad at math. A lot of women believe they are bad drivers. A lot of women believe they are bad at engineering and other things, when in reality, that's not truthful at all. It's just an easy way to survive in a man's world. You were talking about, we've also spoken about the male gaze and the female gaze before. So what you see is like all of us have kind of been raised in a way where we know how men think and we judge ourselves based on the standards set by men. And I think in this episode, we call our audience to reflect on this and see if the standard is something that makes sense to you as a person, not as a woman, not as a man, just as a person. See if it makes sense to you personally. So if it makes sense to you personally, then go ahead and like follow it. If it doesn't make sense to you personally, then like mind your own business. Like you don't have to, go around saying no, this doesn't make sense to me. No one's asking you to follow it, right? Like if someone's telling you, you have to give up your career for something, right? uh, if it makes sense to you, give up your career. If it
Hmm.
doesn't make sense to you, mind your own business and continue your career. No one's going to stop you if you've decided that you're going to be a career woman. I think that is where it starts, because I think a lot of times when women get like told to do things, right, we have this sort of responsible feeling that comes up where we think we need to listen to everybody around us. Child, no, you don't have to listen to anybody. Listen to all the advice, take all the advice, but like don't follow it. I think that would be like the reflection for today's episode. Listen to people who have different lives, who have different perspectives, who bring different narratives into your framework. But understand that ultimately you are a sovereign being, you are an independent being. If it makes sense to you, you can be anything you want to be. So just decide for yourself. Don't say, that person told me, this person told me. Ultimately, if you're making the choice to be a PhD housewife, that falls on your lap. You can't blame your husband, you can't blame your father, you can't blame anybody else but yourself. So yeah.
Yeah, I think the aim of this episode was not to condemn women taking a option of going for, becoming a housewife. It is actually an episode where we are trying to dissect and say that if it was not your choice to be a housewife, then it's time to question. So that is the only thing that we are trying to get through these episodes, is that if you are sitting and blaming that things have happened to you and you are feeling helpless and having that victim mentality, then no, I don't think so that it is a right way to do it. Because if you've seen in the hospital I was working earlier, all the women, the maternity off is like 9 months, right? So they used to work until the next day is the delivery, the previous day. Until that time they will work, and they will take off on, on the delivery date. And I'm not saying it's a good thing, but it is basically that you have the capacity to work, and if you want to work, you can very well do it. It's not like there's a medical emergency for a woman to not do it, unless there is actually a medical emergency and she wants to take the next 9 months to take care of the child, which is her decision to do it. But I think that the fact that you have to sit and think about it, right? The minute, like, what do I want? What do I do for myself? How do I make my life better? How do I not put blame on someone else? Because I know that you work so hard, and I know that any human reaction would be to blame it on someone else. If I didn't get something, I would definitely be looking for something to blame it on. I didn't do this because of that. I didn't do that because of that. And definitely, if you are looking for a reason, or you already found a reason to blame it on someone else, then it's a not a good thing to do at all. So I guess that is something that I want to say. Do you have anything to add on before we close this episode?
I think it's a very nice place to stop. I think, one of the goals that we had when we started the podcast was to empower women. We don't want to be those two girls who sit and complain about how the system is unfair. Yes, we know the system is unfair, but we also want to kind of fix the system. And how do we do that? Grassroots work, basically. So we want to, fix individual mind, paradigms where we sit and think about what about our minds is contributing to the existing system. So when we can dissect the mind and say, okay, it is my thought process that is actually enabling a system that is so flawed. If all of us can unlearn the bullshit that we've learned through whatever conditioning, right? I think ultimately the system will just fall flat because the system needs us more than we need the system. And through this, we achieve a sort of liberation. At least maybe it will not be a spiritual liberation, but at least the social liberation where women will start to finally feel human again. And after that, I think things will, take care of itself in a different way. But yeah, I think this is a very good place to stop the episode. And
Yeah, and thank you all for listening. And I just want to end with this Virginia Woolf's thing again, a room of one's own. So, in metaphorically speaking, try to make a space for yourself. And when I mean by space, if even if you choose to be a housewife, have a social life, have things for yourself, and that is very important. If all your identity is just about your home and your children and your husband, I think you must be living the wrong life, which is not meant for you to be lived like that. You need to be happy. That's the whole point of living, and that happiness will transform people around you as well. So create a space for yourself, create a room of yourself where you can have your own thoughts, sit and think, sit and have ideas and aspirations. So do share your comments in the about this episode, anything that you want us to talk about, and like, share, and subscribe and everything, and follow us on Instagram as well. So we will see you again for a next nice episode. And until next time, bye.
bye, everyone.